The first song we'd like to offer this morning is written by Swami Ananda, entitled God's Call Within. This week's reading is taken from Rays of the One Light, Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Yogananda and Swami Ananda. Did God create the universe or become it? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The Gospel of St. John chapter 1 contains a passage that explains the essential truth that creation is a process of becoming. The universe is not separate from God the Creator, but a part of Him, even as our own dream creations during sleep are figments of our own consciousness. God's is the life. God's the reality. Not a melody could be composed, not a poem written, were the melody and the poem not already there, simply waiting to be expressed. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. Ego-directed desire is like static. It distorts the radioed messages of infinity. But the pristine impulse from the divine, undistorted by limitation and delusion, is the life that gives rise to all that is. As the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita states, I am the fluidity of water. I am the silver light of the moon and the golden light of the sun. I am the Om chanted in all the Vedas, the cosmic sound moving as if soundlessly through the ether. I am the manliness of men. I am the good, sweet smell of the moist earth. I am the luminescence of fire, the sustaining life of all living creatures. I am self-offering in those who would expand their little lives into cosmic life. O Arjuna, know me as the eternal seed of all creatures. In the perceptive, I am their perception. In the great, I am their greatness. In the glorious, it is I who am their glory. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Hanuman. This is Mari, and we're joined by Lorna and Bharati. It's hell getting old. I'm sure it's part of stage fright, but that's all right. So, I thought maybe we were getting answered by the angels there while you were doing the affirmation. I guess not. I'm going to start today's service with a reading from Whispers from Eternity. These are prayers that have been spiritualized by our Guru Paramahansa Yogananda. And this one is on page 30, the Universal Prayer in the Cosmic Temple. With a myriad of living thoughts of devotion, I have built for thee a temple of awakening silence. I have brought the multicolored lamps of wisdom from all valid faiths. They shine with the luster of thy one truth. The commingling incense of human craving for thy love soars up in the spirals from the incense bowl of our hearts. Thy sacred presence shines on altars everywhere. All prayers of all temples, tabernacles, churches, mosques, and viharas are chanting to thee in the universal language of deep love. The orchestra of our combined feelings plays in harmony with the chorus of all soul songs, with the cry of all tears, with the bursting shout of all joys, and with the united anthem of all prayers. In this wall-less cosmic temple of soul, we worship thee, our one Father. Be pleased to reveal thyself to us always. Amen. Om. Amen. So today, we're talking, well, did God create the universe or become it? And, you'd think that would be a relatively easy subject. And we've already heard that, well, God actually became it. So there's the spoiler alert. In the rays of the one light, it also says that, for as life of man is not his body, but that which animates his body, so the life of the universe is that which eternally animates and sustains it, the indwelling spirit of God. So God basically is everything. And I was particularly piqued when in the reading it said that the universe is a progression. Us being a part of that means we are a progression, which is great. That means we haven't if we mess up, we're a progression, right? So the question is, how then do we get from point A to point B? Well, Master says to us that it is very important that we get away from this ocean of suffering. So the masters know that we're living in an ocean of suffering, that we're really living in an ocean of distractions, and we're going to be talking about that too. But first, let's talk about suffering. Mari and I went to a play, a musical. Fiddler on the Roof was just out here in Portland. We love musicals, hint. But this one, I actually had not seen the whole story before. I had seen parts of it when I was a young man in San Francisco. The original cast played for free at Stern Grove, which was a weekly thing. They had different people play. And it was fantastic, but I didn't realize the whole story, and it really is a story of suffering, in that we have a Russian Jewish family in a Russian village during the turn of the century when the Tsar's beginning to fall out of power. And they basically get kicked out of their village at the end of the show. But before that, he has these 5 daughters, and his wish is to find husbands for them. And then at that time, you used a matchmaker, which, since it was the turn of the century, the daughters weren't going to have any part of it. That's just, it's kind of passé, Dad. And Dad talked a lot to God, which was really great, because here was a poor milkman trying to do his best to serve his family, and so was his wife, by the way. And yet, things were happening that he had no control of. And throughout the show, there's this fiddler that kind of comes through, who's playing the fiddle, of course. And he's kind of swerving and going back and forth, and he's playing a tune. And you wonder, well, what's the fiddler? What's the purpose of the fiddler in the movie? So I look it up. And of course, there's the answer. The fiddler is a metaphor for tradition and how tradition becomes unbalanced through the progression of life. And that our traditions, cultural, religious, social, family, all those are in flux, are in progression. And I turned to Mari and I told her, "Did you know?" And she said, "Well, that's what the whole play was about." So I guess I missed more than I thought. But one of the interesting things in the play is, at the end of the play, everybody, like I said, gets kicked out of the village because it's getting turned over to the czar, I guess. And so they're on a stage and they're walking in a circle. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, this sure looks familiar to me, that our lives really aren't that much different than these people in this musical. We're, for the most part, those that are not particularly on a spiritual path and trying to direct their lives through God or whatever their means, whatever works for them, they're just pretty much walking in a circle. And that circle will continue to happen until something changes in their hearts and minds. And so how then does that happen, that we get out of this, even for all of us that are praying and meditating and doing all those things, we can oftentimes feel that we are also stuck in going in circles. That changes, though. It can change every day. It does for me every day, both the circles and the change, in that we strive to attune ourselves to something greater. Because we know that the ego itself, by itself, in other words, if we try to lift up the ego, we're going to decrease our happiness. So we know this by example. And, you know, it's not like the ego's this bad thing, but it really isn't a help to us when we are not tuning into a higher power. So if we're just looking at life from a material aspect, I mean, how many times were we told, well, you make your list of the pros and the cons, and somehow you're supposed to figure it out? That never worked for me very well, but that's what I was being taught at the time. You find out that the way that to find happiness is by letting go of this sense of I and mine and tuning into the universal, tuning into the cosmic consciousness. And that is what brings us to self-realization. Knowing that God exists within ourselves, knowing that the answers for everything in our life are here, right within us. Are they apparent to us? It's really rare that occurs. But it's not unusual that we are, through meditation and calmness, you get up from your meditation and you're trying to stay in your spine and you're trying to stay centered, that life brings to you the solutions that you're looking for because you're listening. That song, wasn't that song great this morning by our choir? I mean, that was the whole sermon, really. I could sit right down now. And if you remembered that song, that's what it's all about. So listening to what God is trying to tell us is very important to us. Recently, I was reading a blog by Swami Raman. He's the director up in Seattle. And he's actually to me, one of the best speakers, if not thinkers, I think, on our spiritual group, because he always takes things to a very precise point and has a clear message, which, you know, I strive for. We do our best. Anyway, he wrote a blog and said, "Will there be war?" Well, what's he talking about? This has been one heck of a week, hasn't it? Yeah. And if we didn't at least touch on the subject, we'd be kind of like looking like got our heads in the sand. So we've had a big week. And so he wrote this blog. He actually wrote the blog, though, on Master's birthday, January 5th. And this is just an excerpt. Life in 2020 is complicated, polarized, and highly nuanced. The need for authenticity and genuine relationships, lifestyles, and guiding ideals has never been greater. The question, therefore, is what are you going to do to lead an authentic and meaningful life? Well, that's a good question to ask. What do we do? Just fussing, fuming, worrying, and otherwise living outside your calm center in reaction to the issue is potentially a handy way to deflect awareness away from your own personal issues and responsibilities. That was an interesting thought because I had an interesting conversation with somebody this week about this, about what's going on in the world and stuff. And I realized that the more we talked, the more excited we got. And I thought, I didn't really want to go there. I mean, it's important to have an idea of what's going on in the world. It's not important to become a part of it. So, these can include the distraction, can include pushing us away from prayer, meditation, devotion, service, caring for others, focusing on your work, family, neighbors, and community. To stay calm and focused, it is better, the Bhagavad Gita says, it is better to fail at one's duty than to succeed at someone else's. And I thought about this, that it's so much easier to solve somebody else's problems than our own. And that part of what he's saying here is exactly that if I was president or if whatever the case may be, this is how the world would look. So these distractions come up. And these are big distractions. We're not just talking about little distractions. Last week was a big distraction. For a few days there, we just didn't know what was going to happen. And we still don't. And yet, it's those distractions that if we allow that to become a part of our lives in a intrusive manner, then we are really pulling ourselves away from our work, which is to become light, to be an instrument of light. If we're an instrument of worry, what good are we? We're not helping ourselves, we're not helping our friends, we're not doing anything but adding to the problem. So, what can we do to change that? Well, one of the things we can do is create new habits that will help us keep us in track. Well, it's the beginning of the year. You're going to finally get hit with this, right? I know Surendra pretty much said, the habit thing. And so you talked a bit about it. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about habits and breaking them. That's because I read an article recently. It's called New Habits and Taking Tiny Steps. I don't know exactly where this came up. Oh, this is another distraction. You're looking on the computer. You're looking there to find something about the reading that you were doing, and all of a sudden on the side note there's all this other stuff. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Click. And pretty soon you've even forgotten what you're looking for. So beware. So these are just 4 things that you can do to create a new habit. 1, you have to have motivation. So let's take the habit of meditation. That's a simple one. But you can apply this to any any habit that you want to change. But let's say you want to increase your habit of meditation. The first thing you need is to have the motivation. Well, if you meditate, for the most part, I don't know anybody who's done meditation for any length of time who hasn't felt at least some peace. And not only that, but the more you do, the more you realize you are actually in a state of silence and connection, an intuitive state that doesn't have to have a lot else going on, but you feel it. And on our particular path, we focus at the spiritual eye, which some people will see the star here and the blue field and the gold ring. Now, if you don't see anything, which I don't hardly ever see much of anything, but I do see a little bit, because I focus on it. That's the other thing. You do have to focus on these things. And then feel in your heart. So those, as on this particular meditation technique, the idea is that we're focusing that energy and we're feeling in the heart. Okay? So the motivation then is to feel one of those aspects of the divine, whether it be peace or love or joy or light or sound, power or wisdom, all the different aspects of God. And you notice one of them is wisdom. So that wisdom doesn't necessarily come in the meditation, but if you get to that point, to that stillness, and you make that connection, then whatever the issue is that you're working on, the answer will come. Not necessarily at all in your meditation, but it will come because you're listening when you get out of your meditation and you're centered in what you're doing. And you're not allowing the distractions of the day to become your main goal in life. It is so wonderful to live with a peace of mind. In that when shrieking crowds are all around you, that you can still find that place of peace and comfort within. And when you do, two things happen. One, you don't become part of whatever the issue is. And two, you actually might help the issue. One of the greatest gifts that we have on the spiritual path is attunement to the divine. Because if we have even a little bit of attunement to the divine, then when we are out there in the world, it's like the whole world will respond to that, even on a subconscious level. But a smile, clear eyes, attention to the person that we're buying our groceries from or working with. This is unique. This is not the norm, right? You go into a store today, I don't know. It's not, it can be a little bit disconcerting, may I say. That's one thing that Swami used to always do, is he always shopped in local places, and he always made a connection with the people. He was doing the work. He was connecting with others and giving that light to others, which we can do too. So, got motivation, then you need to be able to do it. So you have to pick a goal. So let's say your goal is that you're going to meditate 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes twice a day. Okay, that's your goal, and it's achievable. You can sit for that length of time. Now, you need a personal prompt. What's a personal prompt? Well, I get up in the morning and I brush my teeth. That's the prompt. Or I get up in the morning and wash my face or something early in the morning before the coffee. Okay? I do something. That's the prompt. So I go and I meditate. Okay? And then after I do my meditation, you celebrate that you have completed your brand new habit. And I really do. You can say, hey, good job, Hanuman, you did it. All right. Yes. And give it a fist pump. Whatever it takes. There has to be actually an emotional connection to creating a new habit. What they have found, research has shown, is that it's not how long you do something to change a habit. It's that you get an emotional connection to that habit. So that's the point that you're making, is that you get an emotional connection to that. So stay calm. Be one with the divine. And by doing so, you'll find that your life is happier, other people's lives are happier, and you're adding to the blessings of life rather than taking them away. It does take some willpower. It does take a willing attitude with joy and devotion. With that, it is possible to find God. Without the wholehearted assent of one's will and one's whole consciousness, that noblest of all ends, the pure consciousness of bliss itself, cannot be achieved. Well, that's a little tough. But the Gita also says, that man or woman, however, succeeds supremely, O Arjuna, who disciplines the senses by an effort of mind, who remains inwardly non-attached, and who engages his organs of activity in God-reminding activities. And what are God-reminding activities? But anything that is uplifting. Bottom line. Whatever uplifts you. It might be baking chocolate chip cookies. It might be serving someone. It might be having coffee with someone. You know, there's so many opportunities we have to share God with just the people around us. I am just so blessed to be up here because I get to see all your lovely faces and your smiles and nobody throwing tomatoes at me. And it's just wonderful, you know. It's a real shot in the arm. I would come to Sunday service, obviously, even if I wasn't giving service. But my main reason for coming for the last 30 plus years is I get connected. It is the connection, along with my meditation, but I get that connection of satsang, of oneness with other people who are trying to do the same thing as me. Trying to live a life in God. So, to conclude, this is from Hanuman. The greatest contribution we can make to the world peace starts with us. It's not like most of us are angry, combative, or prejudiced. But we can get nervous, anxious, depressed, gossipy, judgmental, lazy, selfish, or indifferent to the miracle of God who resides within us and all creation. Pray, meditate, serve, give yourself heroically, just as a warrior in the just war, for your soul. Winning your soul will send a bright light out into the world, dark with ignorance. There is no greater contribution that can be made than to bring light into the world. An easy life is not a victorious life, Paramahansa Yogananda has told us. Take up arms of self-control, self-effort, faith, hope, and charity. And win the battle of life.
This is an instrumental written by Swami Kriyananda entitled New Dawn. It's taken from the album Mystic Harp.
Good morning, everyone. There's always something new happening each week at Ananda, and also always things that are ongoing. Drawing your attention to what's new, it's happening at the front desk. There are envelopes for people who have made donations in the previous year. Please pick them up if you haven't gotten yours already. There's also a table of greeting cards, which are more than just heavily discounted. They're 50 cents each. There's lots of them. Think ahead to birthdays and other occasions where you might want to be sending somebody a card, and you'll find something wonderful there, I'm sure. And we have a lost and found table up front also. If there's anything you've been missing, or if you don't remember if you're missing anything, take a look. There might be something there that belongs to you. Also, coming up on Friday, we're going to have a kirtan at the community at 7 o'clock. It's always a wonderful opportunity to chant and enjoy satsang and meditation with each other. That'll be, I believe, at 7 o'clock. And looking farther ahead, we have our Raja Yoga beginning the first week of February on Tuesday, February the 4th. It's our foundation course, 10 weeks, 13 classes. It's a wonderful opportunity to just not only immerse in our teachings, but to enable those to just take us, as Hanuman was talking about, to a higher level of inspiration and motivation with respect to whatever your spiritual path is. Ongoing, we also have our yoga classes. We have 3 of them during the week, and our drop-in meditation. Let me go back to the Raja just for 1 minute. There's a discount available until January 21st. If you sign up, you can sign up either online or register at the front desk. And if you don't remember everything I've just mentioned, our website, anandaportland.org, there's a calendar, and there's always plenty of other information there too.